Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel My Time My Teacher. In this video we will talk about class 11th sociology, chapter number 4 of second book, introducing Western sociologists. We will talk about how the sociology was introduced to the world as a new subject, who played major role in introducing the subject, how the sociologist came towards the new subject, that all about their life also, that we will talk about in this video. So to start with, I want to tell you that sociology is also called the child of revolution, the child of age of revolution. You know what is the age of revolution? It was the age which revolved the whole world. The system of work, the lifestyle of people, the system of governments, everything was revolved. And before that, just before that, the sociology was introduced. So that's why we also call it the child of age of revolution. To begin with, we will start with the context of sociology. Sociology is having basically the three contexts, and the first one is the Enlightenment, the second one is the French Revolution, and the third one is the Industrial Revolution. These three are the contexts based on which sociology worked, sociology started. To begin with, the Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? The enlightenment, it is giving light to the mind of the people. Enlighten the mind. Mind means enlighten the thinking of the people. How the people they were living before the sociology came, and how the life got changed. Before sociology came, the human beings, they were living completely in the darkness, following the tradition, whatever was there. For example, if we talk about the bonded labor, they were just living in the darkness, without hoping the freedom from this bonded labor, without hoping freedom for their children, for their coming generations. But when sociology came, it gave them the enlightenment that you are also a human being. You can also live happy life. Your children can also go to school. They can also sit with the people of upper caste. They can also live a normal life. That is the enlightenment. When the people, the human beings, they have been taken from the darkness towards the light. That system is called the Enlightenment. Number 2, we have French Revolution. Students, French Revolution also played a very vital role. It started in 1789. It is very easy to learn the date. 1789. 1789. It was a time when there was a monarchy everywhere in the world. But when French Revolution came, the monarchy was rooted out and the democracy came in. You can think that this was just a little bit difference, but actually it was not. It was a big difference in the life of the people. When monarchy was ruling, the people were living a life of a slave. They were not treated as a human being. But when they got freedom, when democracy came in, they got independence, they got freedom, they got rights to do anything. Or basically we can say that the birth-based rights were demolished, and the rights to the person who really deserve it were given because of French Revolution. During monarchy, only the birth-based rights were given to the people. Those who were born in poor families and lower class families, they were not given any right throughout their life. But when democracy came in, they got the right, they got freedom, they got the right to live freely. That was the French Revolution. It played a very vital role. Third one, if we talk about the Industrial Revolution. That was also the part of the context of sociology, because the Industrial Revolution was the revolution which changed the life of people both in the rural areas as well as in urban areas. In rural areas, the people, those who were just working in agriculture sector, they got an opportunity to come out of the villages, to come out of the rural areas, to come out of the agricultural sector and to join the industries, maybe as a worker, laborer, security guard, technician, whatever the things were. But they got an opportunity. If we talk about the agriculture sector, they were getting income only twice a year. That was also not sure. It completely depended on God, mercy of God, rain, drought, and so on. But when they joined the industries, they got the jobs there, they got the income regular. They got income every month in the forms of salary. When the person gets income regularly every month, that completely changes the life of the family, life of the children, the future of the children. The people, those who were working in industries, they started to pay attention towards their families, towards their children, to give them better infrastructure, to give them better facilities, to give them better education, so that they can send them to a better post, instead of working in the agriculture sector which was given by the forefathers. It completely changed their life. It gave a new birth to a new colonies, a new society. In the villages, you can see that the people, they were living in the colonies, mohallas we call it, where one mohalla means one caste, another caste means another mohalla. When industrialization came, the new colonies were set up, and in the new colonies there was no space for casteism. The colonies were set up without discriminating on the basis of caste, on the basis of religion. The people, those who were living in the new colonies, setting up their houses, they were not worried about the religion, about the caste. They all were living together. A new society was formed. The children were playing together. They were sharing the food, they were sharing the culture, the traditions, they were celebrating the festivals together. The biggest change which we had in the Indian society, especially because in Indian society the casteism has always been on the top. It was something which was going to hurt it a lot. And that all happened because of Industrial Revolution. It was not possible without the introduction of industries, without giving them the jobs, right? So now we'll move to our next thinker. Totally in this chapter we have three major sociologists in this chapter. Out of that, the first one is Karl Marx, second one Emile Durkheim, and third one is Max Weber. We will talk about all these three one by one. First of all, beginning with Karl Marx. Karl Marx, he was born in 1818 in Germany and died in 1883. You can see he lived almost the whole 19th century. What he was doing is, he was born in a prosperous lawyer's family. His father was a very prosperous lawyer. You can see when a child is born in a rich family, how does the child lives? He get all the facilities. He does not have any kind of problem in his childhood. The same was with him. He also studied law. After completing his studies, he got married and shifted to Paris in 1843 at the age of 25. At the age of 25 years, he got married and shifted from Germany to Paris. How many years? He lived here for 6 years, from 1843 to 1849. And in 1849, he was exiled from Paris to England. After that, he lived his whole life till he survived in England only, nowhere else. But during this time, you can see that he gave us two important theories. The one is capitalist society, the another one is class struggle. That we will talk about now. What is a capitalist society? Since I told you that Karl Marx was born in a very rich family, he saw that how the employer and employees, they were living in the society. He saw the difference between the rich people and the poor people. The people, those who were giving jobs to others, the employers, were called capitalist society by him. He observed the difference, the ways of treatment by the employer to the employees, and then he gave us another theory, class struggle. Once again, what is capitalist society? The people, those who are giving employment to others, the employers, the owners of the companies, the rich people. Class struggle, the struggle between class, basically the employer and the employee. You can say the upper class and the lower class. Lower class means the workers, the poor people. He gave the theory of class struggle, in which he told us that the employer is not able to give freedom to the employees. The employer is not ready to give proper wages to them. The employer is not ready to treat them just like a human being. The employer wants to earn profit at any cost without worrying that the employees are also human beings. That is the difference he noted. And he mentioned in his theory of class struggle that we have the class struggle, the struggle between the employer and the employees, because the employer is not ready to satisfy them with their needs. Employer just wants them to work for him without taking any rest, without asking for the rights which they have, without asking for the medical facilities, without asking for the allowances, without asking for the high-tech machines, because technology was improving day by day during the time. The employer did not want to buy the new technologies to improve the condition of the employer. He wanted everything to be done manually, even though it was taking a long time. Why? Because he wanted to earn profit, did not want to invest in the machinery. Because of that, when the employees, they were losing their life, they were losing the hope, they were getting old, their family was suffering, employer was not there to support them. Because of that, there was a clash between the employer and the employees. The employer also was not satisfied, the employees were also not satisfied, even after doing a lot of hard work for their employer, for their boss, for the owner of the company. That was the theory of class struggle which he gave us. After Karl Marx, we will talk about our second sociologist, Emile Durkheim. Emile Durkheim, he is also known as the founder of sociology because he was the first professor of sociology appointed in Paris in 1913. That's the reason he is called the founder of sociology. Officially, he got first post. Before that, Karl Marx also worked for sociology, but he was not having the post of sociology. We see here Emile Durkheim. He was born in Germany at the border, in the border areas. You can see the time in 1858, 1917. This was the time when First World War was about to raise. And you can imagine the conditions at the border. At any time, even the peace time also, you can imagine the condition of the people, those who are living at the border of a country. They are having a lot of restrictions throughout the year, even though there is no war. But at the time, the world, they were preparing for First World War, how he was living. He was born in an Orthodox Jewish family. You You can understand the condition of Jews in the First World War. His father, grandfather, they all were the priests. In spite of being an Orthodox Jew, he did a lot of hard work among the people, the poor people especially. Karl Marx, I told you, he was born in 1818. After that, Emil Durkheim started to work with the poor people, especially with the people, those who were suffering. So what he did? He wrote his doctoral thesis on the basis on the subject division of labor in society. That was published in 1893. Division of labor in society. A doctoral thesis written by Emil Durkheim. When it published, it brought a lot of changes in the society. Because in this thesis, he emphasized that the labor should be divided on the basis of skills. We should think before assigning a duty to the labor which work we are giving to the person according to the interest, according to the knowledge of that person. Otherwise, what is happening? It is going to give harm, give loss to himself, to the company, to the products, right? To everyone. For example, if you are having two works, one is the work of plumber, another is the work of electrician. Even though they do not have any special diplomas, degrees, those who are working in our local areas, but still we think about whenever we need the work of plumbing, we want to call a plumber. When we need to do something in electrician, we want to call an electrician. Imagine if we are going to mix them, then what will happen? We are calling a plumber to do the work of electrician, and we are calling an electrician to do the work of plumber. What will happen? They will charge, obviously. The quality of the work will be very poor. The time which they will take to complete the work, that will be longer in comparison to if we are calling the same person for the same work. Right? So he gave the theory that we should decide, we should discuss, we should find out the interest of the person, the qualification of the person, what they can do. After that, we should give them the job, the work. If we want to earn profit, or if we want to let the person enjoy the work. If you are calling some wrong person, or if you are just giving the duty to some wrong person who does not have any idea about the work, then the work will be quite boring for the person. In spite of being the poor quality, lot of investment, the person will not enjoy the work. And we are not getting out of it. But if we are calling the same person who is interested and who is having the knowledge of the same field, then it will be good for us as well as for the person. So he insisted on the point that we should work on the division of labor on the basis of their skills and their interests, if you want to get something good out of it. Right? This was about Emil Durkheim. Now we are moving to the third one. Max Weber, he was born in 1864 in Germany itself. You can see the three sociologists which we have talked in this video, Emil Durkheim, Karl Marx and Max Weber, they all three were born in Germany. Because he was born in a very prosperous family, because his father was a magistrate, a higher official. Because of that, there was no problem of money in their family, because the regular salaries were coming and working on a very high post, law. He also studied law because of that, because of the behavior of his father, because of the job of his father. So obviously he got attracted towards law and he studied law. After completing his studies, he gave us the theory of interpretive sociology. That we should interpret the things in sociology, that how the social sciences are different from natural sciences, how the social sciences should worry about the people, should worry about the people of the society. Kanu, quiet please. Can we please quiet? he told us that there is a great difference between social sciences and the natural sciences. Social sciences, they are basically born for the human being to improve their life, to change their life, to think about their sufferings, to think about their people, to think about their future, to think about their past. That he gave us the theory of interpretive sociology. The two another words which are quite related with interpretive sociology given by Max Weber are sympathy and empathy. I want to tell you the difference. The difference between these both is sympathy is feeling for. If I have feelings for somebody else, that is called sympathy. Empathy is feeling with. Feeling with somebody else is called empathy. I will tell you by giving examples here. For example, I am going somewhere and I saw the beggar, a poor person, a poor child, and poor old man. So what I will have sympathy for him. I am feeling sympathy for the poor person. Maybe I'll give 10 rupees, 20 rupees, or maybe I'll donate something else, maybe clothes, maybe blanket, or like that. Food sometimes, right? That is called sympathy. Empathy is feeling with. For example, one of my friends' relative died and I went there to meet, to give my condolences. So there I will feel, I'll have empathy for him because I'm also feeling in the same way as he is feeling. He is feeling sad at the death of one of his relative. I'm also feeling same sad. So this is feeling with. Feeling sorry with one of my friend, that is called empathy. Feeling sorry for the poor condition of the people, for somebody else, is called sympathy, right? That is sympathy and empathy. These were given by him. Now we are at the last topic of the chapter, bureaucracy. To start with, first of all, it is important to know what is bureaucracy basically. You may have heard about the civil services, IAS, IPS, IFS, IRS. These are the top officials of the country. These officials, they deal with every situation, every policy, making the policies, implementing the policies, assisting the governments and all that. Because governments keep on changing. For example, a government is right now working. Soon we have elections. After election, the government changes. The minister, chief minister, prime minister, all are going to change. Then what will happen with the policies? How to run the departments? Then these bureaucrats, these officials, they are going to help the government in all the policies, in ruling and running the government, right? So bureaucracy is basically the officers which are bureaucrats, which are top officials of the country, those who are helping the government to run the government, to make the policies, to implement the policies in a better way. These are the highly qualified people, right? Now we will see how the bureaucracy works. The features of bureaucracy, there are 5 features: functioning of officials, hierarchical ordering of positions, reliance on written documents, office management, and conduct in office. These are the 5 features, how these bureaucrats work, how bureaucracy works. First of all, I'll talk about functioning of officials. The officers, those who are in bureaucracy, or we can say the higher officials of any department, how do they work? They work according to the written documents. They work on a position. Like, it is the duty of every official to work, to follow the seniors and to give orders to the juniors, to supervise all the junior officers, those who are working, and to give directions, to give orders to all those people who are supposed to follow that. Second one is hierarchical ordering of the positions. The orders, they come from hierarchical, like from top officer to next to next to lower to lower to lower to lower and the lowermost. This is the way how the orders, they pass from the top to the lower one, because everyone should know what is going to happen. At least the work is going to be implemented by the people, those who are working at the lower stage. Top official is not going to take part in the work almost all the time. Hardly they go, but they monitor everything from their office itself. They keep on taking the updates from there. reliance on written document. Whatever work is done in the office, that is done completely on written basis, completely on paper. For example, if an officer is going to get transfer and the case which was going on is not completed, then how the next officer will take the charge of it, because he does not know anything about it. In that case, the written documents, they help the person, they help the officer to know the case, to know the history of the case, and to know the activities whatever is going on at that time. So complete trust on the written documents. Whatever written documents are there, they trust on that. Nothing is done orally, everything is done on paper in a written way. Next one is office management. This is the new modern style of managing the offices, because it is the duty of every senior person, senior officer, to supervise the work of juniors. Like this, every officer is having the responsibility to complete the work in time and to do that honestly. It helps us to manage the system in a proper way, like arrival of the officer, departure from the office, and so on. Everything comes under office management, and a good officer always conducts the office management properly, because that is the first thing to start the work with. Last one is the conduct in the office. The officer is having a very perfect conduct in the office, because please 1 minute more, quiet please बेटा. हो गया, चलो अब मैं स्टार्ट करूं. ठीक है, अब मैं स्टार्ट कर लूं. कन्वी में स्टार्ट कर लूं अब. The last one is conduct in the office. An officer should have such kind of behavior that should be appreciated by all in the office or outside the office, because the officers usually have the public dealing also. So it is the behavior of the officer which is going to which is going to give trust to the people, those who are looking for the justice and those who are doing the work. Officer is having the responsibility to motivate the staff to complete the work in time, to give trust to the people, those who look for the justice in time, right? So this is the conduct in office. This is all about the chapter introducing Western sociologists. That is up to here only. It's a very small chapter. Hope my video will help you to understand that all. If you think it is helpful, please like and subscribe the video and share also with your friends. Thank you very much.